please have a seat. Good to see everybody this morning. Good to see you here in person. Good to see you on Zoom. Thank you for joining us today. My name's Ruth. I'm one of the pastors here, and I want to welcome you to week 4 in our series, Everything Seems Broken. Today, as Matthew mentioned, we're going to be looking at serving, and how much do we love our volunteers, right? Volunteers who make coffee and serve donuts, volunteers who make all the magic work in the sound booth, our youth leaders, our kids teachers, people who greet us at the door. Thank you to everyone, our musicians, wonderful musicians. Thank you to everyone who serves. And our community really does serve a lot. We are a community that serves, and I'm very grateful to be part of a community like that. For example, over the last 18 months, we have provided approximately $18,000 worth of groceries and gift cards for the families in need at Greencastle. I think we have a slide for that. $18,000 worth. That is a lot. Do we have a slide for that? Maybe we don't. Okay. Well, I think we do, but there we go. And that's amazing. It's not just the dollar amount, but also the work that goes into that. For each of those deliveries, there were probably a dozen people went to the store, got the stuff, brought it back here, and then it got packaged up and delivered. So thank you for that. In another example, we've grown and given away over 2 tons of farm produce, representing hundreds of volunteer hours. Our Guatemala team has continued to meet and to support our friends in Nepal with emergency food, as well as with the ongoing scholarships and health funds. Our worship team worked incredibly faithfully during the shutdown to produce songs, the songs that we love, to produce those from home so that we could have in-house recordings, and so on. There are so many examples of service here in our community. Again, thank you to everyone who serves in whatever way. We're a community that serves, but I think right now we're also a community that's tired. Well, many of us are. Many people I talk to are feeling stretched thin and worn down. We thought the pandemic would be over by now. We thought life would feel more normal than it does. And disappointment and anxiety are very draining emotions. Proverbs 13:12 reads, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick." And I think a lot of us can identify with that to some extent. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I think many of us feel a little bit heartsick and tired. So we have less emotional energy for all the normal stuff of life that still continues anyway: illness, tensions at work or at school, family issues, money concerns. And when we're tired and depleted, when everything seems broken, as the title of this series is, probably the last thing we want to hear about is serving, right? I'm just taking a guess here, because serving is often tiring. Maybe we can all get together and push for a one-off thing, but serving week after week after week, month after month, that can be really tiring. Many of us feel like we don't have enough energy and time to get on top of everything, even at the best of times. And right now is certainly not the best of times. And if we're honest, serving's not always a whole lot of fun. It's often hard work. It's time-consuming. We may even come away feeling not particularly appreciated. Maybe you get a quick thank you, but people don't really understand, time and effort that it's put into, and we might feel, maybe it's not worth it. At the same time, we can feel the opposite. We can feel like everything we do, nothing is good enough. Nothing's enough. There's so much more that we could be doing. There's so much need. We're good people. We want to help, and it can just kind of feel overwhelming. So maybe, like on an airplane, we should put our proverbial oxygen mask on before trying to assist anyone else. Maybe we should focus more on self-care at times like this, and not so much on serving others. Maybe. But maybe that's actually something of a false dichotomy. Maybe it's not about self-care versus serving others at all. And I'll suggest a few reasons for that. Firstly, it seems that in some ways we are created to serve. It's an inbuilt part of who we are. Numerous studies show that over time, serving is strongly linked to well-being and happiness. To give just one example, a 2010 United Healthcare study of more than 4,500 American adults revealed that of the people who volunteered on average more than 100 hours per year, so a couple of hours a week, 68% reported feeling physically healthier, 73% said volunteering lowered their stress levels, and 89% stated that serving had improved their sense of well-being. Psychologists studying happiness, of whom there seem to be an inordinate number these days. I don't know if you've noticed that. I think it's kind of the go-to career. I think I should have done that one. But anyway, they note that volunteering or serving other people provides various benefits to the one who serves, including a sense of purpose, a sense of community, and a sense of agency or ability. We realize we're not useless or helpless. We can make a difference. And that can be a very empowering feeling. In fact, I think we noticed that particularly at the beginning of this pandemic, lots of people I know made face masks for frontline workers or did grocery shopping for their neighbors in need or found other ways to help out. In fact, many of the people who dropped off groceries for Greencastle would say, I'm just glad I can do something. We want to do something. We want to make a difference. We don't want to just be helpless bystanders. And this connection between helping others and ourselves comes through in a couple of verses that we often read at Cedar Ridge. In Matthew 11, Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." I like the first part of those verses best, right? Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. I think some of us think Jesus should probably have stopped at that point. But strangely, Jesus continues by immediately talking about a yoke. Now, a yoke, of course, was for working, not for resting. It was what went round a pair of animals' necks to fasten them to a cart or a plow or whatever. It was a symbol of servitude, of hard labor. The Pharisees, the Jewish religious leaders, talked about the yoke of the Torah, meaning the very heavy, serious duty of obeying all aspects of the Jewish law. In contrast, Jesus says his yoke is easy and his burden is light. The phrase, "take my yoke and learn from me," might suggest that Jesus is in particular referencing the practice of teaching young animals how to plow, and you can see that here. They got yoked to an older animal. So when an animal first learning how to plow, it wasn't really carrying the weight of the plow. It wasn't really doing the work. It was really more about learning how to walk in step. And maybe that is what's implied here. Some of us, I think, are very quick to carry the weight or to try to take on the cares of the world, or at least the cares of everyone around us. We have a tendency to wear ourselves out, trying to do everything and feeling guilty if there's any need we come across that we don't respond to. These verses tell us that we don't need to do that. We can trust God to take the weight. We're invited to lean into God, to simply fall in step and allow God to take responsibility for sorting out the world's problems. That's not for us to do. So second, I think an important part of self-care is serving, because it's about coming into step with God. It can draw us close to God. Now, it doesn't necessarily do that, of course. It's very possible to serve out of all kinds of wrong motives, right? We can serve because we feel superior or self-righteous. We might do it looking for applause, or because we have a martyr complex, hopefully not quite as bad as Basil Fawlty's as we saw in the opening video. But there are lots of unhealthy ways of serving, and I think we know that already. But serving that comes from a place of love is very much what God is all about. We see that throughout Jesus' life. Jesus is always serving other people, teaching them, blessing them, feeding them, forgiving them, giving them hope, etc. We read time and again that Jesus was moved by compassion, not driven by ambition or propelled by a longing for recognition or acting out of a desire to be needed and wanted, but moved by compassion. And that's the model that Jesus sets for us. This is the way that we are called to. And serving from a place of love, counterintuitively, is actually very liberating, which is another reason it's important for self-care. Serving takes us out of the rat race for a while. It stops us focusing on getting ahead or keeping up or competing with people or being in control. It redirects our attention away from those who've got more than us, who are better we think than us, or more successful than us, and instead focuses our attention on people who we might think have less. It helps us to see actually how blessed we already are, how much we have to be grateful for. Serving rejects society's view of who matters and who doesn't. Richard Foster put it this way: service allows us to say no to the world's games of promotion and authority. It abolishes our need and desire for a pecking order. This abolition of the pecking order is a point that Jesus repeatedly makes to his disciples. And this morning, we're going to be looking at a very well-known story of Jesus washing his disciples' feet, which of course is a very vivid illustration of this point. But first, we're going to look at the context. So this story is only found in John's Gospel, but the writer tells us that it took place at the Last Supper. So Jesus' final meal with his disciples before he was killed. A week before the Last Supper, Jesus had a meal with some of his dearest friends, the siblings Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead just a little bit before this, and the family hosts a dinner for Jesus, which kind of feels like the least you can do if somebody raises you from the dead, right? At least give him a dinner. And Martha is serving, of course, because that's kind of in her character. And Mary takes a half-liter of expensive perfume and washes Jesus' feet with it as an exuberant gesture of her love and gratitude. And Judas criticizes her wastefulness, but Jesus defends Mary and says that what she's doing is actually preparing him for burial. And then the rest of that chapter, John chapter 12, is filled with repeated references to Jesus' impending death. The religious leaders are shown to be growing in their opposition. The crowds are described as having hardened hearts towards Jesus. And Jesus talks in somewhat cryptic terms about dying. He talks about being like a grain of wheat that falls into the ground and dies in order to bring new life, and about being a light that will soon be taken away. John creates an impression of a very heavy atmosphere, a sense of unease for Jesus and his disciples, of knowing that something is going to happen, that there's going to be a dark turn of events. Now, the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, have many stories that are not in the Gospel of John and vice versa. And one of those stories appears in Matthew and Mark at this point in the narrative. Jesus is in the vicinity of Jerusalem. He's just predicted his death. And in Mark, the prediction's not cryptic at all. It's very explicit. Let's read that in Mark chapter 10. "We are going up to Jerusalem," Jesus said, "and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise." So it's very clear in Mark's gospel. Jesus is saying, I am going to die. That's what he's saying to his disciples. And the story continues. "Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. 'Teacher,' they said, 'we want you to do for us whatever we ask.' 'What do you want me to do for you?' he asked. They replied, 'Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in glory.'" This is a pretty shocking response, I think. Jesus is telling his friends that he'll be tortured and killed, but they don't seem very bothered by that. Instead, they focus on the 3 days later I will rise part and seem to think Jesus is saying, well, there'll be some kind of a temporary setback, but then there'll be glory. And that's what they want in on. They want in on the glory. They want to be in positions of authority. They want to be up there, the big three, Jesus, James, and John. Of course, the other 10 disciples don't take that well. We read, "When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, 'You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many.'" Human leaders want to know how many followers they've got, how many people they control, how many they can exercise authority over. That's the measure of their power. Galba was a Roman emperor for 7 months from 68 to 69 CE, before he was assassinated. Lovely guy. It's claimed that he summed up the thinking of the time about what it meant to be a great ruler by boasting that he could do what he wanted, what he liked, and do it to anyone. That's one view of greatness. But Jesus' view is the exact opposite. Greatness is not found in making others serve you, but in serving others. So that's the context for the story we're going to read now from John chapter 13, beginning at the first verse. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you will have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." Now, some churches still practice foot washing, particularly on Maundy Thursday, the evening before Good Friday. But of course, it doesn't hold the same significance for us today as it would have in the first century. The streets then were filthy. There were no sewers, and there were all kinds of human and animal waste that was just ending up there on the streets. And people wore sandals, which wouldn't have offered much protection from all this yuckiness. So feet got very dirty, not just dusty, but nasty, stinky, disgusting dirty. And they needed to be washed before you lay down to sleep or to eat. Because with all due respect to Leonardo da Vinci, people didn't actually sit on chairs at a table with their feet nicely hidden from sight, but would lay around on cushions or on the floor around a very low table where your feet would be in plain sight and smelling range and could potentially be touching other people. So it was common practice that you would wash them off first. Washing your feet was just an everyday practice. In fact, there was a common phrase documented from around the time of Jesus that refers metaphorically to foot washing. Someone entering upon a course of action without due preparation was described as rushing into matters with unwashed feet. So it was nothing to do with being religious. It wasn't a ceremonial purity or symbolic in any way. It was common courtesy. But although foot washing was very practical, who did the actual washing had a lot of sociocultural meaning. In general, it was the people who were socially inferior who washed the feet of those above them. In the relationship between an enslaved person and their master, it was seen as a very lowly and humiliating task, generally reserved for females, and those of very low standing. In particular, under Jewish law, no Jew could be forced to wash their feet of their master. That was safe for the Gentiles, for the non-Jewish slaves. But within a family, it wasn't a humiliating task. It was an honorable expression of love, but again, one that was performed by a social inferior. Generally, it was the wife washing the husband's feet. Don't get any ideas, Ben, that's not going to happen. Or the daughter washing her father's feet. Feet washing was also a common task between a rabbi and his students. And when students washed their teacher's feet, again, it was seen as an honorable way of expressing love and respect. And interestingly, foreign students were exempt from washing the feet of their rabbi because people might assume that they were enslaved. And finally, if you were hosting a dinner, it was a sign of hospitality to provide water for your guests to wash their own feet, or even to provide a servant to do it for them. But it would be very unlikely for the host to wash the guest's feet. So the context really determined whether washing someone's feet was a humiliating, depersonalizing task, or it was an honorable one, of a sign of love and respect. But in every instance, it was a socially inferior person, the least person in the room, who did the washing. So it's no surprise then that none of the disciples, these people who have just been arguing about who is the greatest, none of them has got any intention of self-identifying as the least person in the room. It wouldn't have been humiliating to wash Jesus's feet, he's the rabbi, but to wash the other disciples' feet? No way, that's not going to happen, right? I think we often feel the same about serving, to be honest. Serving God, that's very honorable. Serving other people, maybe people we don't even like that much, or we're not getting on very well with, or people who maybe we think they're better than us, serve them? Yeah, that's not so appealing. Often when I'm speaking, I'll say, this is one of my favorite stories in the Bible. Well, this is not one of my favorite stories in the Bible. This story makes me deeply uncomfortable for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I think it's not, as Matthew mentioned at the beginning, not primarily about doing things for other people. I think it's quite easy, actually, to do things for other people. Might take a bit of effort, but we can do it. It's not that costly. We can decide what we're willing to do, for whom and when. We don't give up any control. We've still got our pride. In fact, we might even have more pride. We can feel proud about how humble we are that we're serving. But I don't think Jesus here is talking about or illustrating doing a service project, doing a good deed for someone once in a while. Jesus is asking for something much more profound, not for us to do acts of service, but for us to become servants. For us to reject that pecking order, to reject what society says that we need to do to have status and worth, to stop measuring people, to stop judging their value, to give up power. And all of that, if I'm honest, makes me rather uncomfortable. I think that makes many people uncomfortable. And I know that actually because time and again, we've taken this story and turned it into performance art. Religious leaders washing the feet of people that they think society deems as lesser. That can be a really beautiful symbol, but also it can be pretty meaningless. There's a show of the reversal of power, bishops washing the feet of parishioners, white pastors washing the feet of black pastors, the Pope washing the feet of young offenders, and so on. But there's no real transfer of power. It's actually not that costly. But in John's gospel, what Jesus does is not performative. In John's gospel, Jesus is continually portrayed as having ultimate power and giving that power away. We read in this passage, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing and wrapped a towel around his waist. Because Jesus knew that he had power from the Father, he takes the dress of a servant and washes dirty feet. In Greek mythology, there's a story of Zeus and Hermes, gods who disguise themselves as poor peasants. But once they're discovered to be gods, they get rid of the disguises. Jesus is not God in disguise, dressed up as a servant. Jesus is God revealed. Jesus serves because God serves. God is love, and that's what love does. In Philippians, Paul wrote, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." This is not a case of despite being in very nature God, he took the very nature of a servant, but because he is in very nature God, he took very nature of a servant. That is what it is to be like God. That kind of humility, that kind of vulnerability, that willingness to risk being used or rejected or looked down on or thought less of, that is what God is like. This is what we're called to imitate. And although that sounds really difficult, Jesus says, actually, it's liberating. It's not a heavy burden. It's an easy yoke. This is not so much of an obligation as an invitation. In fact, at the end of this account of Jesus washing his disciples' feet, Jesus says, very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Jesus doesn't say, if you don't serve like me, you will be punished. He says, if you do, you will be blessed. The way to be blessed, the way to be happy is to have the heart of a servant, to reject the pecking order, to stop trying to be the greatest, the most important, to stop judging people, to stop worrying about what people think of you, and simply serve. Be helpful. Let others go first. Do the mundane tasks, not the huge, impressive things, the projects, but do simple things to help and serve, and do it from a place of love. There are a few opportunities to help and serve others in our neighborhood and in our community coming up that I want us to take a brief look at before we move on to communion. These are not obligations. There is no pressure to do any of these. God won't love you any less. But they are invitations to take care of yourself, to find liberation and joy by serving others. So we're going to see three different opportunities. First, we're going to start with a brief video from Tinica, who couldn't be here today. So here she is.
Hi, Cedar Ridge family. This is Tinica Mather. I'm sitting outside knocking out this video at work, so hopefully we don't get interrupted. I'm sorry I couldn't be there this Sunday. We're out of town this weekend, but I wanted to share with you information about the upcoming pumpkin patch and outdoor movie night. So if you've been here for a little while, you know, of course, we've celebrated yearly all the good work that happens on our farm plot at the property, and each year we typically have a harvest festival to celebrate the harvest we're giving away, all the produce that we harvest that's given to local nonprofits that are serving those in our community that are dealing with food insecurity. In the last Harvest Festival we did in 2019, we had over like 800 or 900 people on our property. So it was an amazing celebration. And then of course last year we couldn't do it because of COVID. This year we're kind of modifying the event. So it's going to be a little bit smaller, a little bit more manageable. We're going to have an outdoor pumpkin patch free to the community with pumpkin carving and painting. We'll have live music still. We'll have a pop-up food truck coming. And then we're going to also do a movie night shown on the side of our historic barn. So what I'm here to ask you for is some help, of course, to welcome the extended community onto our property. There's a sign-up genius that'll be communicated out to the church. Please do take a look and see if there's any slots that would fit what you could do. I apologize for the motorcycle driving by. If you're able to volunteer, we would love to have you. So Saturday, October 16th, the event will start at 5 p.m., a little bit later in the evening, and then the movie will start a little bit after 7 p.m. when the sun goes down. We could use all hands on deck. We'd love to have you, even if you work one shift, for half of the event, and then you can enjoy the rest of the event with your friends and family. Please do invite people. It's a really great way to celebrate what's happening at Cedar Ridge. If miraculously the sign-up genius is completely full, the next time you get a chance to look at it, my email address is on there. You can always shoot me an email and I could plug you in ways to help that maybe aren't listed on the sign-up genius. So again, please do come out October 16th. We'd love to have you. I'd love to get you plugged in and celebrate all the work that our farm has done this year, even in the midst of the pandemic. Okay, thanks very much, Cedar Ridge family. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tinica. Next, I'd like to introduce Tom. Tom Smith is fairly new to our community and is doing some fabulous work, and he's going to tell us about it.
Good morning, everybody. Everybody can hear me? I am brand new to this community and just really excited. My name is, again, Tom Smith, easiest name in the world to remember. But I was very fortunate to serve as a combat medic in Iraq and Afghanistan for about 11 years. Got out in 2013, had no clue what I was going to do with my life, so joined a nonprofit doing medical work overseas. And what really struck me today, a message, I'll be talking about how we can help some of our Afghan refugees. There's 55,000 in the US as we speak, with probably, hopefully, another 55,000 coming in the next couple months. So with that, how I got connected to this whole community was 2016, I was with a nonprofit going overseas. And what you really talked about today was how to go serve people. And you talked about a sense of purpose, a sense of community, and a sense of agency. And it's really humbling to realize when you're serving someone, you only can do one of those. You can't give somebody their sense of purpose. You can't give someone their sense of agency. All you can do is show up with a community. Exciting to see there's really two types of communities, I believe. It's a community of sympathy, which is, I'm so sorry you've been through a lot, or there's a community of compassion, which is stepping alongside of you and saying, I want to give you the same thing I've been given to me, opportunity to serve. And when that really got brought home to me in 2016, I was on an international medical team going down to Ecuador after a 7.8 earthquake. And my buddy Joe, that I just met on the airplane, a team of 20, we were flying down there. And I knew I was going to like him. He was a Marine. He had lost his leg in the same place in Afghanistan that I was serving with. He had a very unique sense of humor. And he was, the stewardess came up and asked us if we need anything. And he asked for a cup of water. She was very gracious, came back with a cup of water. And she said, hey, do you need anything else? He said, actually, I need one last thing. And he proceeds for a minute to take off his prosthetic leg and then hands it to her to put in the overhead bin. And the whole plane is just staring out there and he is just giggling himself away. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy's with me. He's a little bit crazy. We're about to go to this earthquake. Should he actually be here? You know? And for the next 2 hours in this plane ride, he told me about he was having some real struggles with mental health. And I felt sympathy automatically for him, but I questioned, should he actually be here? And lo and behold, we hit the ground. For 2 weeks, we're hiking up in the mountains for about 4 or 5 miles every single day. It's really hot, and he is just crushing it and really coming to life. We're sleeping on the ground, working 18-hour days. And the reason why I tell that story is because on our way back, he turns to me and he says, this is the first time since I lost my leg that someone respected me enough to give me an opportunity to serve. So I'm excited where we have 55,000 Afghan refugees in the United States. Their country collapsed in the matter of a month. And a lot of these folks were a part of that effort to try to build up that government. Through my current work, I got to go to one of these camps. There's 5,000 Afghans at Quantico, which is just about 45 minutes south of us. Was there just last Friday. And they are trying to transition and get up on their feet. Sadly, these past 5 years, the resettlement agencies have just been gutted for funding. And so this literally hit at the worst time. And so thankfully, just 2 days ago, there was $6 billion of funding committed by the US government to help these Afghans resettle. The sad thing is they have 3 months to 8 months to basically be 100% self-sufficient. So with all that being said, there's 3 opportunities to serve. I'm really fortunate, already a group of about 15 folks have been stepping up. And the first is donations. And especially almost majority of the folks in the United States are kids under 12, and we need diapers and we need strollers. So thankfully there's already a bin right at the front desk. So between now and the next couple weeks, if you have some diapers, please drop them off. And then finally, we're looking for newer strollers. The organization that we're partnering with is called Lutheran Social Services. They're great. You can go on their website. I'll be right outside afterwards to hand stuff out. But you can go to Amazon Smile and actually click stuff there, order it, and it goes directly to their headquarters to give to the Afghans. The last 2 things, ways to serve, is their moving team. These folks will finally get to resell in the community after they've been here for a month or 2, and they have about about a week to move in their apartment. So from vehicles to actually helping furnish their apartments is the second really big need. So first, donation team. The second is our moving in team. And then finally, I think is the most impactful, we talk about a community of compassion, is a mentor team. And they're looking for 4 or 5 people to come together with all different backgrounds, because after those 3 or 8 months, they have to do everything. So they're looking to enroll their kids in schools. They're looking for English language skills so they can get ready for jobs. And it's the wide gambit. We have shopkeepers to I was speaking to the deputy governor of Coast Province, like every single skill set, and they're trying to get integrated to the community. So we don't want to burden folks with saying, hey, here's one person, good luck with this family of 5. We're trying to make our groups of 4 or 5 mentors to go pair with a family of 5. To make it sustainable. So this is going to be going for 6 months, year, 2 years. So I will be outdoors right after this. Feel free to ask me any questions. I give you information. And if you can't serve right now, feel free to join our email list. I'll be emailing out about once a week with opportunities. So whether it's 1 month now or 6 months from now when you might be able to serve, feel free to join that list. Thank you so much.
That's Fabulous. Thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate that. Now, I'm going to call up Jen for our third and final opportunity. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
You can? Okay. So hi, everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Jen Hare. I've been working along with Ruth and several others with partnering with Greencastle Elementary School for their Food and Backpacks program. And it's hard to believe that here at Cedar Ridge, we have been participating in this program for 5 years now. So as Ruth had mentioned, since April of 2020, we had shifted our donations more towards gift cards and some perishable food items like fresh fruits and vegetables. But now that school is largely back in person, we're switching back to our previous model of those non-perishable food kits. So we've committed to donating at least 25 of those food kits per month throughout the school year to Greencastle, and we're going to be delivering them on the third Wednesday of every month. So for the month of October, that's coming up this Wednesday, October 20th. So this is just going to be an ongoing need throughout the school year. And these food kits are designed to provide supplemental snacks and maybe a simple meal that students in need can take home to their families to share over the weekend. So an example kit might consist of something like a can of beans and a box of rice and a can of tuna or chicken, so a can of vegetables, some applesauce cups, granola bars, things like that. And if it's helpful, we have an example kit set up on the table in the Commons just to take a look. We're obviously trying to promote healthy eating habits, so whenever it's possible, we should select any organic or whole grain products, fruits that would be packed in natural juices versus heavy syrups, canned meats packed in water versus oils. And the school has asked us to avoid sending glass jars or any items containing nuts. It's easiest if we can pack those kits in just plastic grocery store bags, and also being mindful of the overall weight since these students have to carry the bags home with them after school. It's really helpful if you can give us complete kits so that saves us sorting and rearranging. It's just easier for the donation process. Example kit options are on a piece of paper outside there at the Commons at the table where we have set up, and also there are lists online if you want some guidance of what food's included in a particular kit. So if you would like to donate and you're here in person, there's again a paper sign-up sheet out front. You can put your name and contact information and the week that you'll be donating. We'll be happy to send you an email reminder. Otherwise, you can take a look on our website, and if you navigate to our community and serve with us, you'll see that there's a Sign Up Genius where you can also sign up for the kits. So we'll have a bin out front in the Commons area every Sunday if it's convenient and you're here at church to just bring your kits and put in the bin. But also we'll leave some bins outside the main doors so that during the week, if you're passing by and want to drop off that way, that's an option as well. So I just want to thank everybody so much for your participation so far and keeping this program alive. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or Ruth after the service. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks to both of you and Tinika. And they will be around afterwards outside, so we've got some flyers and stuff. And thank you, Alison, for putting all the links in the Zoom chat too. So if you're on Zoom, check those out. I mentioned previously that this story makes me uncomfortable for a couple of reasons. And the first, as I've said, is because I think it's not just about doing things, but actually becoming a servant. The second reason I think it makes me feel a little uncomfortable is because it feels so intimate. I'm not sure I really want Jesus getting quite that close, seeing and touching all my dirt, all the stuff I've stepped in walking through life. I don't know about you, but I feel a lot like Peter in this story. I don't want to wash anybody's feet, but I don't really know that I want Jesus to wash mine either. But the writer of John is clear that Jesus does this as an act of love. He writes of Jesus, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. He loved them all the way down to their feet. Even though, according to John's gospel, Jesus knew that the disciples would fail him. He washed the feet of Judas, his betrayer. He washed Peter's feet, even though Peter would deny knowing him. He washed the feet of the others who would just run away and abandon him. No doubt when it was over, they would hang their heads down in shame. And perhaps as they did, they would look at their feet and remember that they were loved. It's only by knowing that we are totally loved, totally and unconditionally loved, regardless of all our failures and all our brokenness, that we can serve, really serve, without worrying about what people will think of us. And so we accept the love of God that's symbolized by bread and juice, love that is offered to everyone, no matter who we are, no matter what we've done, no matter what we feel about ourselves. This is offered to us. And so we respond by taking a cracker and juice from one of the tables at the back, or maybe we want to light a candle as a form of prayer, symbolizing that. Maybe we want to write out a prayer at the stations at the side where it says journey and grow. Maybe we want to make a financial offering and place it in the towels at the back, or simply sit in silence. However we feel that we want to respond. Let's listen once more to the words of Jesus. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Amen.